Good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Also, happy Halloween out there, obviously, for all those trick-or-treaters and all those people who like to dress up today, obviously. It's Thursday, October 31st. Happy Halloween out there. That's REM Korea. Obviously, we have some football today, very spooky Thursday night football game, along with some college football, more basketball. Obviously, we finished the World Series. Baseball is finally over, obviously, so congratulations to the Los Angeles Dodgers for beating the Yankees in 5 games. Obviously, no more baseball, but obviously plenty of sports to continue obviously into the upcoming month of November, obviously finishing the month off October. We want to finish it off strong, but obviously do a quick recap how yesterday went for you, Ari. Obviously, you had your one play with the Knicks just straight up on the money line. Obviously, that was a great winner for you. You want to explain your thoughts on how that Knicks game against the Heat went last night?
Yeah, I mean, it's a little scary early on. The Heat were up, I think, like 10 second quarter. The Knicks were struggling, taking advantage of some of their open shots from deep. I think Mikal Bridges was 1 for 7 from 3 to start. But then he finished 4 of 11, so he made 3 of his last 4 threes. Cat exploded for 44 points, 13 rebounds. I guess you could say that matchup done a little won them the game because Bam only had like 8 points, I think. So basically that matchup won them the game. Brunson had his usual solid 22 points. So I think they outscored them by 13 in the third quarter. So they basically took over in the third quarter and then didn't look back from there essentially. So, a good win for the Knicks to get me back on track after the loss from 2 days ago.
Yeah, obviously, it was a little bit of a rocky start for the Knicks, obviously just finishing strong. We mentioned the third quarter being a pivotal quarter for a lot of these NBA games, obviously coming out of the half. Some teams like to, take a little bit of their foot off the gas. Some teams like to put their foot on the brake, some other teams like to, put the pedal to the metal. Obviously, just try to, see what they can, crawl back if there's anything. And obviously the Knicks obviously outscoring the Heat 13 in that third quarter, obviously making the difference there. You mentioned Karl-Anthony Towns. I even said yesterday, Karl-Anthony Towns, you mentioned with Brunson, potentially having more of an assist day. And I said maybe Karl-Anthony Towns has himself a day, and that's definitely what he had. Obviously, you mentioned 44-13. Brunson still had 22 as well. And you mentioned Mikal Bridges didn't really find his shot until late, but obviously that's when it mattered, obviously hitting 3 of his last 4 threes to obviously seal the win there. So obviously that is a great way for you to end, obviously, yesterday, obviously, with a win. But obviously we got a Thursday night football game here. It's pretty spooky. It's pretty weird. I know it's a pretty weird spread line, but we're not targeting any of those. We're just targeting the under here. I'm liking the under 42.5 here, -108 on DraftKings for the Texans and Jets tonight, obviously. You look at these two teams, right? We know the Texans injured to high hell, right? No Stephon Diggs, no Nico Collins. They're suffering injuries right now, right? The pass game is going to be a little bit suspect now because last time I remember, I think it was last year, CJ Stroud played this same Jets team, went 10 for 23 yards, 91, I think 10 for 23 completions, 91 yards, just had himself a really, really bad day. But I expect now from last year, I think they're going to rely on the ground game a lot more. And that's why I think guys like Joe Mixon, I think he's going to have a big day on the ground. I've seen his attempts line at about 20. So I think that, I mean, if you're seeing an attempts line at 20, they're basically saying, like, we're going to just force feed, obviously, Joe Mixon on the ground, which obviously kind of, goes in tie with the under here, obviously running clock here. On the other side, it's going to be a little interesting to see how the Jets scheme up offensively because the Texans do like to bring heavy blitz, and obviously the Texans have a pretty good defense as well. And I think if they really have any success, it's obviously going to be on the ground. With the Texans, I think they're 16th in rush EPA per play. So if they're going to have any success, they're going to lean toward Allen and Hall in the backfield. And obviously, when both offenses are going to be more focused on the run, I like an under in that spot. I think it's going to be a very low scoring game, just ugly game. And look, you're gonna be giving out candy to the trick or treaters, and you're gonna peek at that score. You see it's 10-3 at half, and you're like, oh my god, do I really have to go out and give these kids candy here on Halloween, and instead of watching this? And then you see the score, you're like, oh, it's 10-3. Oh, never mind, I don't want to watch that anyway. So it's an ugly game, obviously, right? You have all the injuries on for the Texans side, but if I was to lean aside, I'm leaning the Texans. Obviously, I am done betting the Jets. I think the Jets are frauds. I think, like I said, their whole team is in Cancun right now. Just their brains are in Cancun because locker room's gone. there's a lot of hostility within that locker room. They just lost to New England, but obviously a lot of people like to back that, obviously, backing on a short week. So I'm just going to stay away from the side here. I love this total here. I think it's going to be a low-scoring game. Obviously, like I said, both teams are going to be using their ground game, and the Jets, obviously, one of the better secondaries in the league. Obviously, Houston has a good defense as well. So I think this is going to be a little more of a ground and pound game, obviously, try to establish the run for both teams. Obviously, it coincides with the under there. So I do like this full game under 42.5 here, -108. Ari, why do you like the under today?
Yeah, I'm on the same wavelength. I mean, obviously, we all know the Jets being in disarray and, coming off the lot. You didn't think it'd get any worse, and then they lose to the Patriots. And then, and then on the other side, you have Houston, who obviously we all know is without Collins already and now Diggs for the season, unfortunately. Mixon's been playing well, so you're either going to rely on him. And the Jets, their secondary is still very good, but the run defense has not been good the past as of late. So I think we're going to see, them feed Mixon. And like you said, you don't see very often where a running back's line for carries is at 20.5 or 20, whatever it's at. So I think it's that high for a reason. Texans defense is still respectable enough, especially given the state of the Jets offense. I mean, I think we could see a pretty decent game from Adams, I think, because he hasn't had a big game yet with the Jets. But overall, I think we can end up seeing a field goal kicking contest between these two teams. And with the Jets placing Zerline on IR and now having a new kicker, who knows how that will work out for them. With those field goals, obviously we know Fairbairn's, pretty reliable for the most part for Houston on their end. So I'm staying away from the side as well in this game. I'm just going with the under, and I think it's going to be a pretty classic, ugly Thursday night game where, I think it could be like a 2017, 2014, 17-14, something like that, where I don't even know if they're going to score 2 touchdowns, so maybe like a 19-13 or something like that. I think, the line has gone down 3 points from the opening line, and that's for a reason. I like the under where it's at 42.5. Again, staying away from a side here and just backing both defenses and I guess backing both defenses and fading both offenses at the same time, which essentially all in all calls to an under.
Yeah, obviously you mentioned it, fading both offenses here. Obviously we mentioned the Texans, all those losses on the offense. The Jets offense is pretty much just ridiculous right now outside the run because, they can't really get anything past going. And obviously they have all these drives, but they can't finish these drives or whatever's going on with them. And obviously, like I said, Houston, Houston's good defense. Obviously they do blitz a lot. And obviously that's not what Aaron Rodgers wants because obviously the Jets' offensive line is pretty bad. And obviously Aaron Rodgers, at his frail age, he takes a couple and we know he's been a little banged up this year, but if you take a couple of those bad hits, against that pass rush, against guys like Will Anderson and whatnot, could be a long day. So I do like that under as well. You mentioned, kind of just fading both offenses here, backing both defenses. Even though Houston, they did lose Azeez Al-Shaair, obviously, who is one of their better run defenders. Obviously, that kind of actually plays better for the Jets. Obviously, I think they attack the ground as well. You mentioned Adams potentially being more involved. I think, the past couple of weeks he is starting to get involved with the offense, but I think this is finally the week we see maybe him potentially get in the end zone, but I just like this under here for you and for me as well. So we're both on the under here, 42.5. Our best bet of the night, obviously, in this weird Thursday night Halloween creepy game, obviously, between these two teams that you see. Obviously, a lot of people have been talking about this line. People talking about, obviously, the 6-2 Texans and the 2-6 Jets. Why are the Jets favored? We're going to stay away from that. We just like the total here. Obviously, you mentioned the total's been climbing down, and I think it's been climbing down for a reason. I think it's going to be a very low-scoring game, mentioned ground and pound. I don't think these offenses maybe get a little stalled here, maybe punt, obviously. That's obviously great for the under. And then, like you mentioned, the field goal game. I think it's going to be a big field goal game as well between these two teams. So our best bet tonight, the full game under 42.5. You can find that on our Twitter below AKP Sports Talk. We're going to have all of this posted momentarily. But that's going to do it for this episode. Tomorrow, obviously, we're going to have our preview for the entire week, and Ari's going to dive into Saturday. We'll both dive into Sunday. and obviously getting ready for next week. Obviously a big week, getting ready for the beginning of college basketball. We've been waiting for this moment. Obviously tips off on Monday. Obviously a new week of college football, and obviously a new week of NFL, and obviously NBA as well. That's going to do it for this episode. That's Ari. I'm Korea. We'll be back tomorrow. Happy Halloween, guys.